Wild Bearings Outdoors. I'm Sam Johnson.
And I'm Chris Sloan.
We're your Wild Bearings Outdoors host, where each episode we'll take you to one of our bucket list locations where the scenery's beautiful, the history's interesting, and the fly fishing's amazing. In this episode, we're headed into the North Georgia mountains to fly fish the famous Etowah River as it flows out of the mountains and into the magnificent Montaluce Winery. Aside from the winery's great wine, food, and architecture, this section of the river is loaded with big trout.
It sure is, man. I'm ready to fish. Not many places you can spend the day chasing trophy trout in such a beautiful and historic mountain setting, and then step out of the water and into a world-class winery with great wine, delicious food, and lively entertainment.
And Chris, we've asked Montaluce's general manager, Matthew Garner, to join us on the river. Now, he's not a fly fisherman, but we're going to do our best to turn him into one.
Hey, we'll take that challenge. And to help us, we've invited our good friend and professional guide, Stephen Tomasevich, also known as Big T of Sequoia River Outfitters and Big T Fly Fishing, to see if we can get Matthew to change gears from making great wine and entertaining people to catching big trout on a fly rod.
Well, either way, it'll be a fun day. And throughout the day, we'll learn about the Etowah River's history, the Native American influence, the Army Ranger Mountaineering School that's close by, the Appalachian Trail, gold fever that gripped the area in the 1800s, and a heck of a lot more.
So come along with us on this episode of Wild Bearings Outdoors as we experience this historic area and spotlight Montaluce Winery and Restaurant sitting here on the bank of the Etowah River.
All right, let's go catch some fish.
Go get our mojo on. Matthew, how you doing?
Hey, Chris.
Good to see you.
Hey, Matthew, Sam Johnson.
Hey, Sam.
Hey, it's good to see you, and thanks for hosting us here at Montaluce Winery and Restaurant. It's really great to be here.
Welcome.
How long has Montaluce been in existence?
Well, we broke ground October 2006. We planted the Vineyard spring 2007, and we opened the doors to this building on April 5th, 2008.
Wow. And you've been general manager that entire time?
No, I've had every hat there is in the building. Yeah. My first card said Vineyard manager. I said, they called me up one day, said, hey, do you want to be the Vineyard manager? I thought that would be great at dinner parties. So I came out here, but I was involved in the site work. I was involved in soil and erosion control, for all of the infrastructure. And then in the spring of 2007, they cut me loose and I got to plant a vineyard. So no matter what happens, I've got that under my belt.
Well, we've heard so much about Montaluce over the years, really, and it's just, it's really exciting to be here. We've known about the Etowah River.
Sure.
Because we fished the headwaters up in the Ranger Camp.
That's right.
That we'll talk about later, but it's just exciting to be here and spend some time with you.
I'm happy to have you guys. Let me show you around.
I would love it, yeah. Super.
The property itself is 400 acres, plus minus. We've got 16 and a half under cultivation right now. I've got 13 different varietals that we're growing. There's a combination of vinifera, which is the type of grape that you guys are used to hearing about. Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, all of those grapes. And then we also grow French American hybrids. This is Petit Verdot. So this time of year, we've made it through bud break. We've got our little guys growing right here. So you get this little tiny flower in the spring. Each of these seeds has a protein coating around the outside, and that protein coating will develop until about July, where the proteins start to convert to sugars. That's called veraison, and now we're getting ready to make wine. Once we get to that veraison, once that sugar development starts to happen, we'll take this netting and we'll unroll it. We've got these wires out here so that we can wrap around the netting to help protect the grape without damaging the actual.
How do these hold up during the winter?
As long as the plants are completely dormant, the xylem is in the root system, so I can take some cold weather. If the buds start swelling and then it freezes, then you've got issues.
I guess what surprises me is, is putting on grapes now but it's also putting on foliage on the top.
There's a lot of energy that a grape produces, but we've got clay soils and lots of humidity. So the energy that would go look for water is now pushing up through the canopy. We do a lot of canopy management.
Yeah.
Anything that we don't absolutely have to have for photosynthesis or fruit production, we'll remove.
So Matthew, talk to us a little bit about harvest.
We're blessed in that we have a few different varieties, so we don't have to pull everything in at the same time. If everything goes well, we're harvesting at the beginning of September. For the reds, you want them to hang as long as possible. You want all of that stuff to hang and get good sunlight and to develop over time. So we'll let the Merlot will hang until mid-late October. We'll set up these black plastic pots. We'll get out as early as we can in the morning, because once you separate the fruit from the plant itself, it can't regulate its temperature anymore. Fermentation will start without you if you're not careful. We load everything up, get it into that nice cool winery as fast as possible. You have to go through the picking, the pressing, and get it into a tank that day. The basic anatomy of a grape is there's the rootstock, then there's the graft site, and then you grow whichever grape that you decide that you're going to grow. This one happens to be Petit Verdot. We've got roses planted in some of the ends of the posts. It's like the canary in the coal mine. If the rose has got it, your grape's about to get it, and so you can get in there and take care of it.
Well, this is really very interesting, walking through, 16 plus acres of vines here at Montaluce. But I'd like to make a suggestion. Let's go get on the Etowah River and see if we can catch some fish.
Let's go fish.
All right.
That sounds like a great idea.
Well, we've had a great breakfast this morning. I want to take the time to thank Big T, Stephen Tomasovich of Sequoia River Outfitters for guiding us. The Etowah is about as wide as me and you right here. You can actually just drive across it. So tell us a little bit about the Etowah River.
Well, you wouldn't know up on the Army Ranger camp when you're on Montgomery Creek that creek's going to run for another 164 miles until it forms one of the headwaters of the Coosa River in Alabama that flows down and then goes into Mobile Bay. The earliest reference to the name, the Etowah, reportedly a Native American name. The first time that it can be found in print is on a map that was printed in 1795, and it called it Hightown River. The source is in the Army Ranger camp about 12 miles upstream, and then it flows out of the National Forest and it's on private land. The only part of that 164 miles we're concerned about today is the last 12 miles, which is here. Mile 12 and 11, I believe, are basically touching the Montaluce western boundaries, and that's where we're going to be fishing today. T, talk to us about the fish, the type of fish that we're going to be going to the Florida today.
Predominantly, you're going to run into brown trout and rainbows. Fish are going to be larger in nature. They're going to have some real trophies in this river.
How big trophies?
You're going to get stuff up into the mid 20-inch or larger even range here.
Where do these fish typically hold, the big ones like that?
They're going to be migrating towards oxygenated water where you've got a lot of turbulence there, but they'll also be in some of your slower, deeper pools where they don't have to work as hard against the current.
What are some good bugs that we could typically use or recommend?
I suggest you go with a high protein meal, such as a big stonefly, maybe a nice squirmy worm.
I'm probably going to do like a 9-foot 5-weight for these size fish. I mean, that's probably in the bottom, the mid part of that scale. Are we good with that?
I wouldn't go higher than that, actually. The problem with trout, if I fish too heavy a tippet, they're never going to bite.
Well, Matthew, since you're our general manager, guest angler today, what's your experience fly fishing?
And that concludes my experience with fly fishing.
Well, you're in good company today because you got 3 guys that know a pretty good bit about fly fishing. T knows more than Chris and I put together.
Well, I'm counting on you guys to make me look good.
I suggest we limber up, get our stuff together. Let's go jump on the river.
Let's do it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right.
Pretty little guy.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. There we go.
There it is. Yeah, that's a nice fish.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Well, they're fighters. Pretty fish, colored up a little bit. Woo, he's aggressive. He's like, oh!
When I set, you can't wait. They eat and spit things real good. Set.
Hey guys, we've caught a lot of fish this morning. Why don't we run up to the winery and tour the winemaking operations, come back to camp, and let's jump on the river this afternoon and do the same thing.
Sounds like a great idea, Sam.
Sounds good to me. So we got our friends and our friends' and our friends, and then we brought everything inside. The first thing that happens is we put them in this guy, which is the elevator. You take your clusters and it'll lift them up to the top, and then it goes into the destimmer. That destimmer has a drum with slightly larger than grape-sized holes in it and some plastic paddles that push those clusters through. As it does, the grapes drop out the bottom and the stems come out that end. Onto the shaker table. That's where we pull out any leaves that are still attached, any stems that didn't come off, anything that is too ripe or anything that's not ripe enough. The good stuff goes down to the end where it meets up with our crusher. I've got 2 counter-opposed rubber gears in there that spin super fast. You don't damage the skins, which is where all the deliciousness comes from. It comes down into this pan, which has got an auger in it, which is pushing the mush into a peristaltic pump. So I'm taking my grape mush and I'm pushing it through this tube and then out into a pipe, and we put it into this press. From the press, we'll put them in the fermentation tanks. Fermentation is yeast. Each sugar makes alcohol and CO2. Once they go into the tank, it takes a few weeks for the fermentation process. One of the other byproducts of that process is heat. And if they go too fast, the temperature rises and your proteins that make up your flavors start to unravel, and you can develop volatile acids, right? So this thing is literally getting an upset tummy. Over here, I've got a thermostat. That thermostat has a probe in it that monitors the temperature of the wine. If the temperature goes up, solenoid opens, and I've got, in those pipes, I've got propylene glycol, runs at 25 degrees Fahrenheit, and it allows that to pass through this cooling jacket.
So how long does it stay in the fermentation?
A white we harvested last fall. We put them in the tank. We've gone through our clarification process. We've gone through filtration, and then we'll bottle right around now. Reds have a slightly longer process because you're fermenting with the skins. There's a lot more chemical compounds. You have a longer process. Our red wines will go into the barrels. All of our barrels are white oak. We use Hungarian oak, French oak. Different oaks will give you different flavor profiles and different characteristics, a lot like the yeast. You want to see some barrels?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Barrels.
And so you'll hold it in barrels for how long?
Depends on the wine. We like to go 8 months to a year at a minimum, but you can hold them for 4 or 5 years.
Well, this is just immensely interesting how Montaluce Winery makes its wine from start to finish in the barrel, ready to go. But I'd like to recommend that, hey, we need to head back to the river so we can do some fishing this afternoon, and then I want to come back and I want to taste some of this wine.
Well, we had a great lunch. Got to tour the winery operations, which was fantastic. Thank you, Matthew, for that. Tell us a little bit about the area here.
Springer Mountain is about 10 miles from here. which is the southern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. The southbounders will start around this time of year at the southern terminus and then make their way over the next 3-4 months. It's a commitment and an adventure, and it starts right here. We are located in Lumpkin County. We have a rich history. We spoke a little bit about the Cherokee and Native culture that are in our area. You can't say Lumpkin County without talking about gold.
And that was in the early part of the 18th century, or really 19th century.
19th century, 1800s, there was the first major gold rush in the country happened here.
And there was so much gold, the U.S. actually had a mint in Lumpkin County that minted gold coins, and those gold coins are some of the most valuable gold coins that there are, because at the start of the Civil War, they collected them all and melted most of them down. Most of the gold on the Capitol in Georgia came from Lumpkin County. North Carolina is just another, 25, 30 miles to the north here. The majority of our land mass is national forest. You have a lot of areas like this. It's just really nice to hang out in.
What makes this area so good for grape growing and winemaking?
We have an elevation that is similar to the more historical wine growing elevations, and we've got enough temperature difference to make it possible. We can still grow vinifera here.
It's interesting to me that, you got a world-class winery sitting here, and you go upstream about 10 miles, and you've got an Army Ranger school up there. Camp Frank D. Merrill, which is the 5th Ranger Battalion. This is the mountaineering school where they learn to rappel and climb and hike over mountains and things like that. I've been on Montgomery Creek and got caught in a firefight between these guys. I nearly wet my waders. I tell you, I really did. They're great neighbors, and we love the Rangers being here. They're great Americans.
So we're about ready to get the river again?
I think we are. What's the plan?
The plan is to start up at the Keyhole. It's one of the more prominent, well-known areas to fish here on the river, and so that'd be a good place to start the afternoon off.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
I'm ready to do it.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Pretty little rainbow.
Yeah.
That's a big fish, big fish. Holy cow.
Nice.
What we're looking at here is a Native American fishing weir. It's a V shape. You got the rocks that they've placed all the way across to the middle of the river, and then from the middle of the river, 45-degree angles back to the other side. The island that you see there was not there at the time. It was just this V. The adults with baskets and nets would get there and stand at the opening, and they would send the children and people upstream with sticks and rocks, and they would run the fish down the river. The V shape would funnel them into the middle of that V. They'd try to go out of it through the water. The Native Americans, the Cherokees in this instance, would stick their nets and baskets down in the water and catch the fish in large numbers.
On the water, caught some fish. What do you think?
I think I'll be doing a lot more of this. I think you'll find me down here a lot more often.
I'm really impressed with the fish that are in this stream, and I think the veterans group that manages this water and takes disabled veterans here for part of their rehabilitation and entertainment. Our hats are really off to those guys for the work they do. Let's go back to the winery, Matthew, and let's taste some of that wine we saw you guys making today, and maybe grab a little something to eat up in the restaurant.
So here we are, guys. This is our tasting room. We've got our anthology of bottles, a time capsule of the history of bottles at Montaluce. Our countertops are polished concrete with our bottles crushed in them. We'll make our way over here into the main dining room. You can seat your intimate friends, or you can seat a wedding party, and I invite you to do so. Those are actually Argentinian seltzer bottles. If you look really close, it says agua de pico. They're from the 30s and 40s, and the way they would get the color in the glass is the different minerals in the silica. I've got 26,000 square feet in this building. Everybody wants to sit at the same 5 tables. It's either these tables if it is hot or cold, or it's these tables out here if the weather's just right, like these folks are. And this is the view that everybody comes to see.
Well, that's about it for this episode of Wild Bearings Outdoors. It was a great day on the Etowah River here in the North Georgia mountains. We caught some really nice trout, and afterwards we stepped out of the river and into Montaluce Winery and Restaurant, where we enjoyed some great wine, food, and conversation.
Well, we had a great time today. We also learned a lot about the area's history and the natural beauty. Thanks to our good friend Big T of Sequoia River Outfitters for guiding us. And remember, for all of your fly fishing needs, go to bigtflyfishing.com. We'd especially like to thank Matthew Garner, Montaluce's GM, and his professional team for a wonderful hospitality and experience that we had here today at this amazing facility. We got into some great fish, and Matthew showed us he could catch a big trout on a 100-year-old bamboo fly rod.
We hope you'll be watching the next episode of Wild Bearings Outdoors when we visit another of our bucket list watersheds with all its great trout fishing, beauty, and history. And in the meantime, remember, trout don't live in ugly places.